This podcast is brought to you by WRFL, Radio Free Lexington. Find us online at wrfl.fm. Catch us on your FM radio while you're in Central Kentucky at 88.1 FM, all the way to the left. Thank you for listening, and please be sure to subscribe.
Welcome to Philosophy Bakes Bread, food for thought about life and leadership.
Philosophy Bakes Bread is a production of the Society of Philosophers in America, aka SOPHIA. I'm Dr. Eric Thomas Weber.
And I'm Dr. Anthony Cashio. A famous phrase says that philosophy bakes no bread. That is not practical, but we in SOPHIA and on this show aim to correct that misperception.
Philosophy Bakes Bread airs on WRFL Lexington and is distributed as a podcast next. Listeners can find us online at philosophybakesbread.com, and we hope you'll reach out to us on Twitter at philosophybb, on Facebook at Philosophy Bakes Bread, or by email at philosophybakesbread@gmail.com.
Last but not least, you can always leave us a short recorded message with a question or comment or even bountiful praise if you're so inclined, and we may be able to play it on the show. You can reach us at 859-257-1849. That's 859-257-1849.
Hey Anthony, what's all this noise in the background here that people are probably hearing?
It's the wind blowing through the trees. We are outside, sitting at a campsite right on near the bank of the upper west branch of the Penobscot River in northern Maine. I did say it right. I've been messing that up all trip. We have been canoeing up and down the river for the past few days with some friends we're about to introduce to you with Apeiron Expeditions. Apeiron Expeditions.
Apeiron Expeditions.
I've always said Apeiron. Apeiron Expeditions. We've been traveling up and down the river the past few days with Apeiron Expeditions. That's Apeiron Expeditions, Apeiron Expeditions. You can find them on the World Wide Web at www.apeironexpeditions.com. We're
on the Apeiron Expeditions Philosophy Bakes Bread canoe trip that we've told you about, and we're very excited to be here with three awesome guests for this episode.
We have Ben Vockley and Seth Walton and Alejandro Strong. Say hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Folks will remember Alex Strong from our episode number 57, Philosophy Outdoors. And go check that out if you want to hear about that. And in fact, we're going to, as usual, introduce people in this first segment, but we're going to actually primarily ask Ben and Seth to introduce themselves because we've had Alex on the show before, and you can learn more about his past and history in episode 57.
And we should also tell our listeners that they might hear a sound or two in the background, maybe a hissing, and that is Alejandro literally baking bread at the campsite in the background. We are philosophers baking bread, literally and metaphorically, this afternoon.
And sitting here, we see the Penobscot River flowing. We hear the wind brushing the leaves in the breeze. The sky is blue. The sun is gorgeous, but going down. It's soon to be dinner time here. And
we're here to talk about outdoor education.
Outdoor education.
What an appropriate place to talk about it. So, Ben is an instructor with Outward Bound. We're going to ask him some questions about that. And Seth is a high school teacher and a registered Maine guide.
So not a secondary guide.
Not a secondary guide, a Maine guide. And for those of you who are not from the state of Maine, I found this out on this trip, this is a kind of a big deal. We'll ask him all about this. You have to pass a bunch of tests and you get certified.
We're talking about the state of Maine, not Maine versus secondary, right?
Certified to tour people around the
licensed to guide.
Licensed to guide. See, we got to say it the right way here.
We do want to make a disclaimer that in talking through this episode, neither Ben nor Seth will be representing either Outward Bound or the state of Maine, though they have expertise and will be speaking from their own point of view.
All right. So, because Ben works with Outward Bound and Seth is a Maine guide and does actually stuff with his high school students outside as well, Thought this would be a great opportunity. We've been talking on this trip about how they do outdoor education and think about outdoor education sort of as a philosophy, but also as a formal discipline of study.
That's right.
And so we're going to be talking about that this episode, outdoor education. But before we do that, we need to get to know our guests a little bit more.
That's right. In every show, every episode, we have a first segment that we call Know Thyself.
Know yourself. Do you know yourself?
Yeah, so we like to ask whether people know themselves, but more specifically than the yes or no answer, we want to hear about who you are as a person, and just whatever story you want to tell us about, how we can understand you, as well as how you came to outdoor education. Whoever would like to begin would be fine.
I'll go. This is Ben speaking. I got into outdoor education through various means, but in the end, through my college degree. I was at a school and in a program that I was not particularly happy with, and was studying abroad in Iceland at the time when a friend on that program suggested that I look at my school, which was the one that I graduated from, is Northland College. And I looked into it, looked at the outdoor education bachelor's degree, and decided that it was a perfect fit. It was a mixture of getting to be outside and do the things that I knew I already loved, as well as working with people to help educate them about various things, including the outdoors, but including other things as well.
Right on, but we want to back up too and know just who is Ben, right? Who is this person who came to be interested in
more than just that?
Yeah, how did you fall in love with?
Yeah, what is it?
Outdoors?
Yes.
Yeah. Where did you grow up? How about we start with that?
Okay,
There's something
we'll
about
start
you.
with that. What is your deepest fear? What is your
Speak up.
fear? I was originally born in Minnesota and did many different outdoor activities there, and then moved after a while to Pennsylvania and continued to follow the outdoor pursuits there. My family has always been a very nature-loving and outdoor activity-loving family.
So you grew up going camping and hiking with your family, and that's how you got into
camping, hiking, skiing. We say I could cross-country ski before I could walk.
Oh, really?
I don't know how true that is. You'll have to ask my parents about that. But yeah, it's been in my life for my whole life.
So, but what is it about that? Like aren't couches and televisions awesome, and movie theaters and indoor things?
I take my daughter hiking, and she goes hiking, and she's like, "I hate this, Dad." So, I don't know.
Classic. They are great, and at times I love those things very, very much. But at the same time, I love being in the outdoors. There are things that you can experience in the outdoors that I don't think you can experience anywhere else at all.
Oh, good.
The thing that first comes to mind for me is experiencing your own smallness in a way that is not negative, but in a way that is, wow, I am part of something bigger.
Ooh, I like that.
And I first found that when I was looking up into a beautiful night sky.
Very nice.
So, why outdoor education? The next segment we're gonna talk more specifically about what outdoor education is and how it plays a role in your lives and how you think about it. But why not just an outdoor guide or a river guide? Something just involving the outdoors in general. Why outdoor education? Why the education part of this? What kind of drew you into thinking about that?
Well, to start with, I kind of fell into it a little bit. I ended up deciding, like I mentioned, that I wanted to
just tripped on a tree root,
get a degree. I wish, that would be awesome. I wanted to get a degree in something to do with the outdoors. So I looked around, and that friend that I was with in Iceland mentioned this program, and I looked into it, and I'd always loved being part of a group of people and helping them learn. And I realized, oh, hey, I can help people learn and be in the outdoors at the same time.
Right on.
So I jumped for it.
Sounds like fun. So tell us about yourself, Seth. Who is Seth Walton? Before we get to outdoor education stuff, who is Seth Walton? If there's sort of a story or an image or some way you describe yourself so that people understand you, and then understand what brought you to your interest in outdoor education.
We always think it's important on the show that the person we're talking to
is a person. Right?
Yeah.
Let's show the person.
Not just your ideas, who you are.
It's a long story, but I'll try to sum it up, I guess. I don't know. I have 3 older sisters and mom, and I like everyone in my family is a woman, and I never, except originally had a dad, right? Because that's how that works. But
somewhere in the mix.
Somewhere in the mix, right?
There's different senses of family.
Yeah.
Right. Or like biologically speaking, the origin story of Seth.
So it wasn't an angel.
No. I don't. I feel like I really know who I am, but it's very hard to describe.
Well, so you're a Maine guide.
Yes.
When did you decide, hey, I want to go through sort of the rigors of training for this and
there's a lot involved.
Yeah, it's not like
something about you led you to want to do that.
Yeah, I like a good challenge. It sounded difficult, and so that's why I wanted to do it, which is kind of how I approach life.
There's a lot of things that are difficult. Right?
Yeah.
So why is it that?
It's also outdoorsy.
But it's outdoorsy.
Okay,
I mean, I knew that
go.
it was, it was something that would bring together a lot of things that I'm maybe interested in or have some background in, and it would give me a chance to maybe get outside and
tell us about those interests. What were the interests which drew you?
I really like map and compass and navigation, and so that's a part of it. And I like being outside, and I always have, and I've always felt more comfortable outside. Unlike Ben, who grew up with a family that loved to go outside. Like nobody in my family really is an outdoors person, and so it was just me wandering around outside alone pretty much for my whole youth.
With a map.
No, that came later, but
okay.
You got lost one too many times. You know what might help?
You got lost a lot?
a couple of times, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So what part of Maine do you do most of your guiding in?
I guide mostly out of Mid-Coast and like the kind of Rockport area, but we do a lot of stuff in Muscongas Bay and out on the lakes and rivers around there, and every once in a while we'll go up to Katahdin. But
so you spend a lot of your time on the water and near the water?
Yeah, most of my guiding time is on the water. Most of it's sea kayaking, but it's actually canoeing's getting big, which is why I'm part of the reason I'm on this trip is to kind of enhance my canoeing.
Is there something about the water that you kind of find? I mean, I imagine there's a lot of, like, you can do hiking and things with the outdoor guide, but is there something about the water that you find particularly calls you to it?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but it's always been, I've always heard that siren song of the water ever since I was a little kid. We'd go to the ocean, and I'd be in there 8 hours, and my parents would have to drag me out, and I would refuse. And so it's always been that way, particularly the ocean. I don't know. I think it might have something to do with fractals, but that's just a recent theory.
Really? Okay. I don't know if we have time to get into that theory, but I am curious.
We might have to come back to that.
Fractals? Well, listen. Okay. All right.
Listen, thanks everybody for listening to this first segment of Philosophy Bakes Bread. This is Eric Weber. We've been talking with Ben Vockley, Seth Walton, mostly quiet Alex Strong, and my co-host Anthony Cashio. We'll be back after a short break.
Welcome back to Philosophy Bakes Bread. This is Anthony Cashio and Eric Weber here talking today with Ben Vockley, Seth Walton, and Alejandro Strong about outdoor education. In this second segment today, we're going to talk about outdoor education in general, what it is, what's unique about it, and in the next segment we thought we'd turn to sort of a more philosophically minded approach and talk about what they call expedition behavior or situational ethics. And so we'll kind of talk about sort of ethical teaching in the woods and in groups and how that goes.
Basically the teaching of values in the context of outdoor education, right?
I think we'll find
out if that's the right way to say it, right?
So, Ben, let's start with you. You have a degree and outdoor education, a
Yes,
formal
I do.
degree from Northland College.
Correct.
I got it right, guys. All right. What is outdoor education?
At its most basic, it is education that it's done outdoors.
I should have been clear.
I had to say it, I'm sorry. But to go further than that, it is...
I was asking for that.
He was.
But also, why?
It is education that at times is enhanced or changed, or it's just different than an education in a classroom. You can sometimes have the exact same topics that are taught in a classroom that are taught in a natural setting that completely changes both how you would teach it and how your students can take in that information.
Oh wow, that's pretty good. Can you guys give us some examples? Like what are things that are sort of, how does it change? How does being outdoors change? I know like my students all the time, it's a beautiful day, they're like, hey, Dr. Cashio, can we have class outside? And I always say no. No, we can't, because, the sun's going to be bright on your paper and you're not going to pay attention to a word I say, and it would just be a waste of everyone's time. It's beautiful sunlight. People walk by in the spring and they're not wearing any clothes and you're not paying attention to me. So why bother? We'll get through it fast and go outside.
A lot of naked people in Wise, Virginia, I think.
It's the spring. It's the annual shedding of the clothes.
You mean fewer clothes. Gotcha.
If I can jump in here, This is Alex. There's some really cool things going on where there are preschools and kindergartens and elementary schools that are done completely outside. And one of the things they talk about is that there are less behavior issues because the children are able to run around and move, but they're achieving the same curriculum goals as is happening in indoor kindergartens, indoor preschools. So the children are learning alphabets, they're learning to count. But if we really look at a kindergarten curriculum, a lot of it is what is sometimes called soft skills or interpersonal skills, and it's really about how people work together, how to be a good member of a team, how to share. Like, that's a really big part of kindergarten. So by putting that outside, of having them work outside and allowing the outdoors to spark their curiosity and engage their whole body in learning, we have with that, I think, kind of the kernel of what's really powerful about outdoor education.
Wow. So when we're talking about outdoor education, we should be clear that it's not just like taking college students outside. It's across the curriculum, from kindergarten through the continuing education
Till the very end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it could be leading for college students. We can look at, if we focus in on college students, it can be anything from an orientation trip for college that's about having them come together and make friends and sort of build a really strong tie to that university, all the way to hard science classes that are taught in the woods, and it's the same curriculum that would be taught in a classroom. Students are taking the same tests. They're learning really how to do field ecology. They're learning biology to the same degree that would happen in a classroom, but it's being done on an expedition.
So this is interesting because another way of cashing this out is to think about kind of themes that are connected with perhaps what you might call environments that aren't created primarily by man, right? So in that sense, natural. And so I can imagine ecology classes or biology classes or, hell, physics classes where you have a trebuchet launching something, But, does being outside necessarily change the study of, let's say, logic or mathematics, or is just education outdoors necessarily different, or is it a matter of what you study outdoors?
In fact, I have actually taught a math lesson using outdoor activities.
Okay.
It was actually in college, and we were working with some middle schoolers, and our professors encouraged us to put in some Common Core curriculum into our lessons, which is the basics that every state is required is requiring teachers to put into their lessons. And I saw something that I could add in. I believe it was teaching fractions. And I decided that, hey, this could be really cool to try to put this in. And we were just doing a basic outdoor activity in the form of a game, and I weaved in fractions, and the students understood, and I had actually realized that this was the first time that they had even looked at this kind of thing.
So being involved in outdoor education does not necessarily restrict you to issues like environmentalism and, water systems and biology and so on. Your outdoor education can be pretty wide open.
Oh, yeah. Pretty much any topic you can imagine, there's some sort of application or like practical demonstration of it in the natural world. I mean, like navigation, that's all math, right? And
right, you were talking about fractals earlier.
Yeah, right. And then hydraulics, and there's so many, like the physical sciences. It's just like such a rich resource to look into any of those things. I mean, astronomy, like whatever, and then we have like as humans, we have that whole entire tradition of literature and history that have aspects of it that are nature based or philosophy, and it's all applicable, I guess.
Hell, you can do philosophy outside. It seems
we've been doing it all. Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, this is good. So I'm just trying to get it. So
this is helpful.
When you're doing like an outdoor, so you did a lesson outside, but is this something that you think you could do continuous, like over a semester long, like outdoor class? Like, would you need a blackboard outside to kind of occasionally lecture and then do demonstrations? Help me try to envision. Is there like a formal outdoor classroom, or is it just kind of we go outside with the? I'm just trying to get a vision of this.
I think it can take any form. Sometimes when you're outside, the best method for getting the information across is a lecture. And so you have your group of students and the instructor or teacher around the circle, and the teacher, explains the situation. And there are times when it is best learned through doing. So it's really, I think, just like in a classroom where sometimes we stop and have a discussion, sometimes it's a lecture, sometimes it's read in groups, we can always adapt it. And so it may be that you're the teacher who's just going outside to do the one lesson, and I think we could still call that outdoor education. But I think a lot of times when we say outdoor education, we mean that being outside, being sort of farther outside, is a significant part of what you're doing. So it's not the philosophy professor who goes outside once,
right,
and is begrudgingly going there and is really
not happening in my classroom.
So, and I would say if you go and you haven't adjusted your lesson plan to incorporate being outside, you're not doing outdoor education.
That helps. Okay. Well, I especially hadn't thought about this phenomenon where kids behave better because they can let some energy out, I guess. And if you're sort of in traditional hallways and classrooms, you don't really have the same freedom to let out energy. That's really interesting. You get better behavior that way. What about with grown-ups?
Or
go ahead.
Say high school students.
Or high school students, right?
I know you work with high school students a lot, and is that something do you find that like really helps their behavior?
Are there benefits?
Yeah, I think definitely when you kind of remove them from the constraints of the classroom. One, they can't hide behind a desk anymore, right? But two, you also remove some of that like the social pressures on them, from that kind of structured environment. And that helps open up their ability to learn. And then there's all those things that that science, we're just kind of on the cusp of like really starting to learn about how our interaction with trees calm us down and the way, and we talked about fractals earlier. Fractals actually calm us down because we look at it in the way that there's some sort of like rhythm in the way that our eyesight processes an image like a ripple or snowflakes or something like that calms us down. And so there's so much of that in nature that I think that's like all of that stuff kind of combined together really helps create an atmosphere that enables the kids to be able to maybe learn a little bit easier, a little bit better.
We should tell the listeners that right now we're all, as Seth was talking, we all looked over at the river. We're looking at the light glinting off. We're looking at the waves, and I've never heard this about fractals. And I'm like, hey, look at me. I'm being educated.
In very simple terms, what is a fractal for our listeners?
A fractal is a self-similar repeating pattern, and that's and they were, you know, obviously the source for them for fractals is nature. It's like a nautilus shell, or if you look at a picture of like snowflakes, or if you look at leaves or tree branches, waves and ripples on the water, really great example.
Yeah, I'm seeing the shimmering
it's
pattern.
Like you can zoom in on it and it looks pretty much the same as if you zoom out on it. You can find those patterns, and then it's actually what they use to create like 3D imaging that we use for all of our new movies and whatever they call that, the CGI. Yeah, that's the fractals are the basis for all of that. And
is that right?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Fractals.
I'm learning things right and left here outdoors.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
And in asking about high schoolers and if their behavior changes, in the work that Ben does and I've done with Outward Bound, it's really the core group of students is high school students. And I think Outward Bound it's definitely outdoor education, but it's a particular kind, which is expedition-based outdoor education. So it's this idea of let's go out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and let's see what's learned by being on an expedition. So a high school student, often when they're in their high school classroom or they're at home, the rules that they have to follow don't have a lot of meaning. Those are rules that have only been given to them from an argument from authority. So
this is right because I say so.
Yeah, this is right because I say so. And they may be good rules, but they haven't been given a good argument. And so when you get out on the expedition, what happens is you start to have to prove to them, we're gonna give you a new set of rules, and these rules are based on what works on an expedition. These are the rules to prevent you from getting really hurt, and these are the rules from preventing a really big fight from happening. So what they experience for the first time often is that what they're being told is good behavior is justified and it makes sense. And it's really clear on an expedition because they're going to test it.
Right.
And hopefully they test more the behavior than the injury side. But they're going to start to see, hey, this is accurate. When we act this way, we hurt each other and we respond in a downward spiral.
This is actually a perfect point that is going to be the inspiration for our next segment about expedition behavior, expectations for expedition behavior, and what you call situational ethics. We're going to come back and talk for a whole segment about exactly that, and so it's a great place to end this segment. Thanks everybody for listening to Philosophy Bakes Bread. We'll be back after a short break. This is Eric Weber. My co-host is Anthony Cashio, and we've been talking with Ben Vockley, Seth Walton, and Alex Strong.
If you're hearing this, that means podcast advertising works. WRFL is now accepting new applications for advertising in a selection of our original podcast series. If you or someone you know owns a business in Central Kentucky and would be interested in advertising on WRFL's original podcasts, please email development@wrfl.fm.
Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of Philosophy Bakes Bread. We're sitting outside in the woods next to the Penobscot River, the Upper West Branch. Apparently, there's a lot of branches. It's a wild river. I don't know what's going on. It's got left and right branches, up and down branches, but it all goes to the same place.
This is the place you want to be in July and early August in the summer.
It's a beautiful day.
Oh, man.
It's a beautiful day, and we're here talking with Ben Vockley. Seth Walton and Alejandro Strong about outdoor education. In the last segment, we talked about what is outdoor education. We kind of got into that a little bit. And in this next segment, we're going to talk about what we call situational ethics, or I believe they call it also expedition behavior. And at the end of the last segment, Alejandro was talking about how with Outward Bound, you have certain sort of group dynamics that get tested, and you have rules about, how do you keep people from fighting, how not. These are time-tested rules that kind of help us come together. So, Alejandro, you said this is also part of what we call situational ethics. So maybe give us a quick thumbnail sketch. What do we mean when we say situational ethics? What does that mean?
Situational ethics is the theory that the ethics, what is right and wrong in a situation, develop from the unique characteristics of that place. So, and sometimes ethicists are really worried about where do values come from. Situational ethics is the general theory that says this particular situation has there are certain actions that we do that are more likely to lead to success in that one. So what works in that case sort of becomes the ethics, the right and wrong for that situation. What's really nice about sort of stepping away from that definition and going back to outdoor education, what's really nice about using situational ethics to talk to high schoolers about what's good behavior, what's not great or effective behavior on an expedition, is we're not calling out the way they act is right or wrong. We're saying it doesn't work right now in this situation. So it's kind of, we're not criticizing them as a person. We're saying, hey, you're in this new situation. Why don't we think about a new way of acting here?
Is that the language you use?
Often, yes.
Okay.
So what would be an example of a special situation calling for certain norms that wouldn't necessarily apply when a person is back home and going, let's say, to a traditional school?
An extreme example would be wartime. And so the military talks a lot about sort of a military code of ethics and what is right to do in those moments.
Okay.
And so you can talk about an ethics of war, and you can talk about just war. And so philosophy has a long history of talking about why is it appropriate to kill during war but not during peace. So that would be sort of in the big philosophical picture, that would be kind of the extreme example of two different situations. But thinking of the outdoor classroom, I don't know, Ben, do you have any recent examples
where expedition behavior was needed?
Or are there just any sort of general rules that all right, when we're on this expedition, this kind of behavior, which might be acceptable elsewhere, is just not acceptable here?
The thing that first comes to mind for an acceptable behavior that is acceptable in non-expedition situations, so when you're at your home or at school or in that kind of area versus on expedition, is being part of the group. When you're at home or in any of those places that are not on expedition, you are much more able to step away from a group and say, I don't want to be part of this group anymore. I'm gone.
Yeah, check out and go away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas when you're on expedition, there really is not, unless you fully leave the expedition, there is not a way to say, all right, I'm not going to be a part of this group anymore.
Interesting.
Wow, that's good. So I know you lead a lot of expeditions with high school students, right? And they really care about kind of the group or separating from the group. Do you find they have a trouble with this? Now I have to deal with Sally, and Sally's just the meanest.
Well, just to be clear, the kind of outdoor education I do or am getting into is different than the kind of outdoor education that we're talking about here, as far as expeditionary, because I'm more focused on the technical skill training of potential outdoor leaders versus just participants that are going on one of these courses. So it's a little bit of a different beast, and it's more of a daytime program during school. I mean, I'm involved in the outdoor and guide in a lot of different capacities, so it's hard to
separate
pick which one to talk about here. But these two are definitely Ben and Alex are the ones that do or have done the more extended expeditions with those students. I interact with them in a little bit of a different way. So,
well, you're training leaders then to kind of do outdoors.
Yes.
Things. So as you train leaders, sort of outdoor leaders, are there sort of unique leadership skills you need to teach them along these kind of lines? Like these are behaviors to look out for that will ruin a group or a trip or something like that? I mean...
Yeah, I think I don't have a philosophy that's or maybe like an institutional history that Outward Bound does, where maybe Ben and Alex have picked up a lot of their skills. So I'm coming at this from a very different background. I don't have a degree in outdoor education. I basically have my own philosophies of leadership, and then I mix those up together with my wilderness skills. So what I'm doing is I'm winging it basically, and I think it'll work, maybe.
Do you talk about professionalism or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's that professional ethic and ethic of service, and I guess my leadership style also will probably plays a big part in that. One, you don't ask people to do something that you haven't done or wouldn't do yourself, and a quiet leader is kind of, unless you can't be quiet, is a good way to lead for the most part, letting people kind of figure it out for themselves within a certain parameter of safety. Once they're educated with the skills, let them kind of develop the what works for them, and give them the opportunity to find their own methods and their own style and their own philosophy of how to interact with people and groups in the outdoors.
So I would have to think that the context of outdoors can pose some sort of greater dangers sometimes than in a very controlled environment of a school. Let's say you're in water's involved, someone could drown. Right, in a way that sure, things could go wrong in a school, but you're very unlikely to drown in a classroom. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is the norms you're talking about being in the context. It may be that certain kinds of rules need to be followed much more strictly given the gravity of what could happen. Are those kinds of examples of what you're talking about?
A little bit, but I want to take a second and point out some really interesting statistics. In outdoor education, especially programming, they measure student program days, which is, so if you have 10 students out for 10 days, that's 100 student program days. And so they'd use this so they can do really good statistics about injury rates. And if you compare every summer camp, every outdoor education school in this country, and you compare it to high school sports, the injury rate of high school sports is many times higher than outdoor ed. So the chance of getting injured is not higher. The severity of those injuries is increased because we do rock climb, we do paddle whitewater, we do go to places where it takes many days to get back to help. So yes, the consequences are higher, but it's the chances aren't. I mean, I think that's a misconception people have. But yes, because of that, because of the high severity, we are what you might call more conservative. We wear shoes when we're walking around campsites because a cut on your foot could lead to a really serious infection. And on some international trips, people have died from a simple cut to their foot.
Wow.
So getting high schoolers to understand sort of potential of risk versus severity of risk is a tough thing to do, but it's not something that it's impossible for a high schooler to understand. And I would say most students that go on a trip that's 2 weeks long, by the end of that trip have a really clear understanding of what is acceptable safe behavior outdoors.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that there aren't moments where they forget, because they're teenagers and their brains
Are still developing.
And passion is hard to say no to.
So what are some examples of norms that you'd present either in fostering leadership or in educating people for these sorts of expedition behaviors and situational ethics? What are some norms beyond, let's say, the necessities of being part of the group and participating?
Saying that we present them is not always true. Just to make it clear, a lot of times as instructors, as guides, we are just trying to guide a group into creating norms that are positive. So we're very rarely going to say, unless it's a safety issue, we're very rarely going to say, this is how it should be done.
So it might be, right, you might have some certain rules like, hey, don't go jumping off this cliff without equipment. Those are some behavior rules, but then as far as like the ethics of the behavior is very situational.
Right.
Like to specific, group specific, place specific.
Very much so. Okay. A group that is made up of teenagers who very much want to be on that trip, who have gone through a long process to make it so, is going to be a very different group in terms of norms and in terms of how they develop as a group, compared to a group that is full of students or group members who have been told, say by their parents, you must go on this trip, you must go on this course. And we have to figure out how to change how we are presenting the ideas behind the norms that we want to see, so that it can be, so that the group can create those themselves.
That's interesting. It's very Socratic, right? It's Socrates would ask questions to sort of give birth, to ideas in others, right?
I think that there are similarities, but where Socrates is, where the experience that, for Socrates, the experience that is getting to the truth that they already remembered is the interaction with him as a person, where I would say most outdoor leaders are hoping that they don't elicit it, but they safely allow the students to go through experiences that elicit it. So in some ways,
it's like Seth was saying, like the quiet leader gives them space to.
Right.
Yeah, where Socrates talked a lot more than I would say an effective outdoor leader would.
It didn't work out well for Socrates. Socrates was not an effective outdoor leader. Well, I actually, so I have do the students learn? I mean, you kind of, I don't know, you're probably not going up to them saying, this is situational ethics, and this is how they're forming their own norms, but maybe they kind of, from talking to them after they've left the trips, do they take these kind of lessons about how to sort of form groups and work within these groups? Do they find the situational ethics then can be applied to indoors? When they go back, how would you say, back to the not the back country, the front country? When they return to the front country, do they find kind of the situational ethics, this approach to ethical behavior? Does it still apply?
I've heard from some students that when they've gotten back, something that's been meaningful is that they were a part of a group with really healthy and strong norms, and that when they got back home and didn't have that, they felt a need to try and create those groups. They felt a need to talk to their friends about being respectful. Some of them have gone back to high schools and started, peer counseling groups. So for some people, it becomes a big part of their life. For some people, you don't know, you don't hear from them, right. But it may be that it creates an interest in politics or in examining these questions. So for some people, it might be more of an almost academic response where they want to understand what was happening. Where for others, it's a really practical, this is something we had, it worked, I want to make it happen in my real life, or in my everyday life.
Well, we've got lots more questions to ask y'all, but we've got to bring this segment to a close, and we're going to come back after a short break with one more segment with Alex Strong, Seth Walton, and Ben Vockley. This is Eric Weber. My co-host is Anthony Cashio, and you've been listening to Philosophy Bakes Bread. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone, to Philosophy Bakes Bread. This is Anthony Cashio and Eric Weber, sitting today on the side of a river outside talking about outdoor education with Ben Vockley, Seth Walton, and Alejandro Strong. In the last two segments, we talked about outdoor education, then we talked about situational ethics, which is sort of thinking about how ethics sort of emerges in the situation, especially when you're in groups outdoors. And this final segment, we're going to end with some follow-up questions, some big picture questions, as well as maybe a joke or two for us to giggle at as we go paddling down the river tomorrow.
That's right.
Hopefully so. So we were kind of ending the last segment talking about situational ethics and kind of how it forms in groups and how it's good for the leader to sort of remain quiet as they as groups kind of come to certain norms as they do it. But we're hoping maybe you guys could help us get a little bit more specific. Like what are kind of sort of good group norms for navigating in the woods or on the river or wherever you find yourselves when you're gallivanting outdoors with your group? Expediting.
Sure,
Expeditioning? Expeditioning. What's the verb of the expedition?
Travel.
Yeah, travel.
Or expeditioning.
Expeding.
Expediting?
Expeding.
That's
Expediting.
what Brown does.
All right. Sorry.
All right, yeah, sure. A couple that come to mind pretty quickly are communication and how we want to see positive communication in terms of pretty much all forms of that, whether it be just saying, hey, I would like this thing to be done, or saying a conflict. So that's another one, is conflict resolution and having a group be able to successfully mediate amongst themselves when a conflict arises so that the outcome is as positive as possible. Another one I can think of is basically the idea that we want our students to realize that it is their responsibility to understand that what they are saying is something that can be taken in a negative manner and to think about that before they are saying those things. It's the classic think before you speak.
Nice.
It's a good ethics, good rule, good norm.
I always like the question, do you hear yourself? And some people really don't hear themselves. They don't listen first.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah. Well, as Seth or Alex, do y'all have anything you want to add?
Yeah, for my students and my classroom students too, and this actually goes back to my mentor when I was learning about ethics and philosophy, and having questions about the meaning of life, and he once told me, well, why don't you look in service to others, and maybe you'll find something there. And I've really in my own life have found that to be definitely true, and one of the most powerful opportunities for education and learning and just life change. And so for me it definitely applies, and I really encourage that with my students to, and not like servitude to others, but like service to others. I think it's AmeriCorps, volunteering, and they have an amazing, year-long program and a lot of that is outdoor based, and I've had some former students do that, and it's just an incredible experience, and to have them go away for a year, and then I bring them back and they talk to students, and it's just, it sounds much better coming from, someone that they know, who they were just hanging out with a year before.
We're not just making this up, guys.
Yeah. So I find that, I push that pretty hard, service to others, look there and see if you can't find something that will show you, at least some guidance down the path that you want to go.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before on the show about the idea of kind of, when you look back on your life, what do you want to have accomplished? One of those great things as a very, meaningful answer for a lot of people involves service to others. Nice.
One of the things with outdoor education, service learning, expeditionary learning, any of these like activities, is a lot of times people talk about it as a metaphor for life. So we have this short, distinct thing that's happening, and that's not really, it's separate from our life, but we can learn from it. And have found that misses something. And what I think when we're doing a period of service learning or we're on these trips for a period, it's actually a lot simpler than our everyday life. Like if you think about the last few days we've been canoeing out here, it's a lot less concerns that you have, right? Like what we have to do every day is get up, prepare our food, get down river, set up camp. Like it's a really short list. Our to-do list is short. That squirrel might think differently.
That squirrel wants us to drop some food.
Yeah. But what we have to do here is simple, it's doable, and at the end of the day, we know if we've completed it or not. And that's a lot easier than most of our lives back in home, in the front country, wherever. So what's really nice about this is this simplified thing, we can start to make changes, we can start to do really well. And I think for a young person to have that moment, and then when they get back to their life, and they know what success, they know what being a good person feels like, it really pushes them to keep doing it. And so in this weird way, one of my mentors at Outward Bound explained to me that what we do is we actually in a way harm the student, because we show them a potential and then we take it away from them because they've lived in an ideal community. They've lived in a group that functions highly and is based on respect and a strong ethic. And then they return to a world that most likely is not based on that. So in a way, we have harmed them by showing them what is possible and then putting them back in a world without it. But the reason we cause that harm is so that they then have the inspiration, the spark to make the world more like that. So I don't think that's a metaphor. I think we're simplifying and then dropping them back in the complex.
What a beautiful, I really like that.
I'm saying is what a mentor told me. And I guess I could say it because I think I'm very clear in what the harm is. And I think it's playful over whether that's really a harm.
In a sense, when you teach someone ethics, you can hold them to a higher level of responsibility because they should know better, right? And as such, you're giving someone greater difficulty. Arguably, that's not harming them.
I would say a lot of education follows this harming principle, right? When you really, in my classroom, at least, I strive to sort of harm my students' worldviews. I want it sort of broken and challenged so they can go back. It's not the same kind of harm you're talking about at all, but I think harm might be an okay word here.
So I know that harm sounds harsh, and I don't mean that we are hurting the students. I don't mean that it wouldn't be that sort of legal harm is intentionally. But wait, in a way, I am intentionally doing something to them that will cause a type of hurt. I don't want to physically hurt them. This isn't this isn't that we're making sure they get blisters or we're making sure they cry. But I want to show a not rosy side of the world. And I want to show that the contentness you had and you were willing to settle for, that there's something more than that. And I think we could call it a spiritual or a psychological pain that growth comes with. And I think some of us as educators shy away from doing that to students because we don't want to create discomfort. And as someone who's taught in a philosophy classroom and is taught in the outdoors, I want to push back a little bit on the idea that teaching someone ethics is on the same level of sort of that creating discomfort as this. Because it's one thing to say to people more is possible, and it's another thing to allow them to live it and then put them back in a place where it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I want to talk about pain.
We're going to drink some whiskey and talk about pain.
You want to talk about pain?
But I do. I just want to add to what Alex said. Like I tell my students, like, because my classroom teaching is about career readiness, a large part of what I do right now. And I always tell them, like, if you are comfortable, you are not learning anymore. Like, so you need, if you want to learn, if you want to change, that's definitely part of that equation requires you not being in your comfort zone.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, from what I was kind of reminded of what Plato's cave, right? You kind of take them out into the sunlight and then send them back into the cave, and then no one believes when they say, the sun was so pretty. What sun?
All right.
Let's tell some jokes.
Let's see.
Let's say, soften the blow.
So guys, in every episode, we want to make sure people see both the serious side of philosophy as well as the lighter side. So we have a bit we call Philosoph-Funnies. Say, Philosoph-Funnies.
Philosoph-Funnies.
Say, Philosoph-Funnies.
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 Yeah. Given that, we want to ask you whether you've got a funny fact or a story to tell, either about outdoors or about outdoor education or about philosophy. In fact, I happen to know that Alex has a story about something outdoorsy.
So I was leading a group of high school students, and this was pretty early in my time as an outdoor educator. So I was the backup instructor, or I was the apprentice instructor. So I was working with a more experienced person, and it turned out to be my instructor for my student course I was getting to work with, so that was a really cool experience for me. And we had a group where there was a lot of great students, but there was one or two that didn't really want to be there. And so really early in course, they broke so many rules, and they were hard and fast rules, so they continued to use really bad language and were bullying, was what we would call it today. I think that language wasn't always there, but they were removed quickly. But that created this feeling in the group, this worry that if people used bad words, they got sent home. When this group responded to those two students being removed in a really positive way, they came together and they decided that no one else was allowed to go home, and they were going to take care of each other and make sure everyone made it through that group. And there was a student that probably otherwise would have been the scapegoat, would have been really made fun of. So now we get to the end of the course, the students have learned a lot, and they can do the whole expedition by themselves. So my co-instructor and I were sort of walking behind them, not really interacting with them, and this group has decided to walk through a swamp. And that was kind of the easiest way they thought through, so they're going, and one of them, he's struggling, he's fallen in, and he's the scapegoat. And so he starts cussing, and he's cussing up a storm. And we're far enough back that we're hearing it all, and there's no way we're removing this kid for cussing. He's not, our issue isn't bad words, our issue is when bad words are meant to hurt people. And he's just having a hard day, but the whole group is so worried that he's going to be removed. And they have taken it upon themselves as a mission that everybody makes it through. So they're like, you got to stop, you're going to get kicked out. You got to stop, you're going to get kicked out. And they're just so worried about it that they're picking him up every time. And, we're back there at times the phrases he's coming up with are just amazing. So we're laughing at the combination. We're laughing at these combinations. But we're trying really hard not to be heard because we're not laughing at him. And he's someone who's been laughed at enough times in his life. But on the other hand, we're just so excited because everything we've taught is happening. They are taking care of each other. And this is someone they would not like at home. And just in this moment, it's really clear that he is 100% a part of that group. And they're not going to miss without him. So it's a moment where we were able to laugh with the student, with them not know it, but also just be really excited about they got what experiential education is, what expeditionary behavior was, and they were a crew. They were tight.
Good story.
Very nice. I like it.
Yeah, me too.
And Ben has a joke for us.
Okay, this is a classic joke used by practically all of the outdoor educators that I have run into, Practically. A lot of them have.
Alejandro is shaking his head.
He is. I'll ignore that.
Don't include me
I'll
in your
ignore
list
that.
of clowns.
He'll be one of the not practically. But the joke goes, there are two beavers paddling a canoe through the desert. One beaver says to the other, "Where's the paddle?" The other beaver responds, "Sure does."
I don't get it.
Where is the paddle versus it wears on the paddle?
Got it. Oh, all right. I got it.
I have heard so many.
Oh, I got it.
People
French
use it.
class.
Oh, Lord.
I didn't know where you were going with that one.
Oh, boy.
Well, we want to tell some jokes, Eric?
A bear walks up to the bar and says, "I'd like a rum and a Coke." The bartender says, "What's with the big paws?" And the bear says, "I don't know. Had them all my life."
Groan. All right. A horse walks into a bar.
Outdoors.
Ouch.
All the patrons got up and quietly left because that's a very dangerous situation.
That's a good one.
I actually really like that.
Unless it's a well-trained horse.
That's so much.
I have a knock-knock joke.
All right, knock knock joke.
Say knock-knock.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Bored panda.
Bored panda who?
You know, eagles?
Wait, what? What just happened?
That's a trash panda.
It's a trash panda.
It's a flying trash panda.
Flying trash panda. Okay.
Guys, I'm going to encourage all of you to contact Alejandro Strong and ask him for his very strong opinions on bald eagles. America's trash pandas. Flying trash pandas. Flying. America's trash pandas are the raccoons. All right. Well, everyone, last but not least, we do like to sort of take advantage of all the wonderful technology we have. We can even bring it out in nature right now and record a radio show and podcast. And one of the great things about this sort of technology is it allows for two-way communications, even for programs like radio shows. So we want our listeners to send us their thoughts about big questions we've raised on the show.
That's right. Given that, guys, we'd love to hear from you about whether or not you got any questions you propose for us to ask our listeners for future segments that we call You Tell Me. Have you got a question to pose for our listeners?
I've got one.
Sure.
I want to know, dear listeners, what the most impactful experience you have ever had in the outdoors is, and why it was so impactful.
So what was it that impacted you so much outdoors?
Yeah.
Hopefully it's positive. Maybe it's a negative. Maybe it's I broke my leg outside and I will never go outside again.
Hopefully not. Hopefully we like to think that it's going to be a positive answer. But maybe it's something that happened that you then realized something about yourself because of that, even if it was a negative experience.
I like that. I've got a quick answer for you.
Oh.
I remember going out on an expedition in Illinois, and I didn't realize that the ground beneath my foot was going to give, and I nearly fell off an enormous cliff and barely caught hold of a tiny little sprout of something, which I clutched to and saved my own life.
I'm just having panic attacks thinking about that.
It was it was that spot where you can see forever, close to Carbondale. There's this really tall mountain, and I was holding on for dear life, and I realized my mortality in that moment.
What are you talking about?
There we go. That's a great answer to that.
It sure opened my eyes.
Do you guys want to ask a question as well?
I have an expedition behavior question.
Sure.
All right.
What makes a good road trip partner?
Ooh. That's a good one.
You have to agree on the tunes, right?
Sometimes it's more fun not to, though, because then you get to experience those new tunes that you might not listen to otherwise.
See, we're
Has
learning,
to be
Anthony.
somewhat similar, though. Not too far off.
I like that. You got a question for everybody, Seth?
I don't know if anybody wants to come hang out and talk about fractals and trees. Come up to Maine.
So we don't have a question. We have an invitation to talk about fractals in Maine. Actually, that sounds like
That does sound really fun.
I'm going to take you up on that.
We have taken
I want to
you
go.
guys.
Yeah, I want to go kayaking with Seth and talk about fractals.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be real fun.
That could be our. Well, yeah,
Seth
we could
and I
do
have been
something.
paddling all day. I think that'd be real fun.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Well, everyone, be sure to check out Apeiron Expeditions.com, Apeiron Expeditions.com. And
is that on the World Wide Web?
That's on the World Wide Web.
www.
All right.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Philosophy Bakes Bread. We're literally baking bread while we do this episode.
That's right.
We're sitting here on the upper west bank of the Penobscot River.
Branch.
UWB.
What?
UWB.
We're sitting here next to the banks of the upper west branch of the Penobscot River. That is a very lot going on.
I'm glad you had to say that and not me.
Penobscot River, and having a wonderful conversation about outdoor education with Alejandro Strong, Seth Walton, and Ben Vockley. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah.
And thank you for being our partners on this.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for this
Yeah,
expedition.
You've asked
been
your
a
question.
joy.
This might actually be my answer. Like, this trip
Perfect.
has been just absolutely amazing.
Indeed.
A sunrise I saw one time too.
Sunrise.
So consider sending us your thoughts about anything you've heard today that you'd like to hear about in the future, about all these specific questions we raised for you. Right? What is this sort of most impactful experience you've had outside, and why? I want to hear that one. Road trip. What makes a good road trip partner? That's a whole. We could do a whole episode on that. That's a situational ethical. Right? You're locked in the car. You're listening to music. You're farting all over the place. What do we do?
Oh, jeez.
It's bad. It's dangerous. And come up and talk about fractals on the water with Seth. I'm going to do that. I think that
sounds fun.
That sounds great.
Sounds awesome. Everybody, catch us on Twitter, Facebook, and on our website at philosophybakedsbread.com, where we've got transcripts for this show, thanks to Drake Bowling, and we've had production help from Stephen Barrera, students at the University of Kentucky. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Drake.
Also, if you want to support the show and to be more involved in the work of the Society of Philosophers in America, head to philosophersinamerica.com and consider joining the Society.
If you're enjoying the show, and we really hope you are, maybe take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, or are we on Stitcher now?
iTunes, we're on
Spotify, wherever
Right.
you're downloading us and listening to us, how we've reached your ears and your brain and your heart today. If you take a second to give us a good review, it helps us in the algorithms and reach more people, break more bread, spread more joy.
That's right.
And you can, of course, always email us at philosophybakesbread@gmail.com. And you can also call us and leave a short recorded message with a question or comment that we may be able to play on the show. And you can reach us at 859-257-1849. That's 859-257-1849. Join us again next time on Philosophy Bakes Bread, food for thought about life and leadership.
A bald eagle just flew overhead.
Hey there! If you're enjoying this podcast from WRFL Lexington, you may enjoy our live radio stream at WRFL.FM and, of course, via radio at 88.1 FM in the Central Kentucky area. We have a wide variety of programs you're sure to enjoy. Just go to WRFL.FM/schedule and see what programs appeal most to you. Thanks again for listening to this podcast from WRFL Lexington.